There are certain moments in life that divide a person's story into two chapters. Everything that came before and everything that came after. Moments so painful, so unexpected, that years later people can still remember exactly where they were when it happened. This is one of those moments. On a cold Christmas Eve, while snow drifted quietly across the rooftops of a peaceful American town, a young pregnant woman sat at the far end of a dining table, surrounded by people who called themselves family. Outside, the neighborhood looked like something from a holiday postcard. Strings of colorful lights wrapped around porches. Wreaths hung from front doors. Children laughed in the distance as they played in freshly fallen snow. Everything about the evening suggested warmth, love, and togetherness. Inside the Carter family home, the scene appeared no different. The Christmas tree sparkled from the corner of the living room. Wrapped presents rested beneath its branches. Holiday music floated gently through the house. The aroma of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and fresh baked pie filled every room. Relatives gathered around the table sharing stories, smiling, laughing, and raising glasses to celebrate another Christmas together. To anyone looking through the window, it seemed perfect. But appearances can be deceiving. Because sitting among those smiling faces was a woman whose heart had already been wounded more times than anyone could count. Her name was Savannah Carter. She was 29 years old, 7 months pregnant, and despite being married into the Carter family for nearly 4 years, she still felt like a stranger every time she entered their home. Savannah sat quietly, one hand resting protectively against her stomach, while the other remained hidden beneath the table. Her fingers clenched tightly around a cloth napkin as she struggled to hold herself together. Her eyes were red from tears she had fought all evening to conceal. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry. She had promised herself she would make it through one more family gathering without letting anyone see how deeply their words affected her. But some battles become harder to fight when you are fighting them alone. Across the table sat her husband, Ryan Carter. Years earlier, Ryan had been the man who made Savannah believe in forever. He was charming, confident, attentive, and kind. When they first met, friends often described them as inseparable. He was the man who brought flowers to her workplace. The man who drove across town just to spend 10 minutes with her during lunch. The man who promised that no matter what happened, he would always stand beside her. Yet on this Christmas Eve, Ryan barely looked at her. Every time Savannah glanced in his direction, he seemed more interested in speaking with his relatives than with his wife. At first, she told herself she was imagining things. She had been under stress. Pregnancy had been exhausting. Maybe she was simply emotional. Maybe everything would improve after dinner. Maybe the holiday spirit would soften the tension that had quietly settled over the family throughout the past several months. Savannah wanted desperately to believe that. But deep down, she sensed something was wrong. Something felt different. The smiles around the table seemed forced. The conversations felt rehearsed. Every now and then she noticed family members exchanging brief glances before quickly looking away. Even Ryan's mother, Patricia, wore an expression Savannah couldn't quite understand. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't excitement. It was anticipation. As though she were waiting for something. As though she already knew how the evening would end. And she wasn't the only one. Ryan's younger sister, Brittany, kept checking her phone while trying to suppress a grin. 2 cousins whispered to each other and laughed. An uncle sitting near the end of the table repeatedly glanced toward Ryan. Small details, insignificant on their own, but together they created a feeling Savannah couldn't ignore. She didn't know it yet, but every instinct she had that night was trying to warn her. Because in less than 10 minutes, the people seated around that table would participate in an act of cruelty that would leave scars far deeper than they could imagine. Years later, neighbors would still talk about what happened that Christmas Eve. Some would call it heartless. Others would call it unbelievable. But everyone agreed on one thing. No one deserved what happened to Savannah Carter. Especially not a woman carrying a child. What happened next began with a simple sound. Laughter. Not joyful laughter. Not the laughter of people celebrating the holidays. This was different. This was the kind of laughter that reveals what people truly think when they believe there will be no consequences. The kind of laughter that turns humiliation into entertainment. The kind of laughter that can change someone's life forever. Suddenly Ryan pushed his chair away from the table and slowly stood to his feet. The room became quiet. Conversations stopped. Forks were set down. Every eye turned toward him. Savannah looked up as well. For a brief moment, she thought perhaps he was about to make a Christmas toast. Maybe he wanted to announce a name for the baby. Maybe he had prepared something special. After all, this would be their last Christmas before becoming parents. Instead, Ryan reached beneath the table and pulled out a large manila folder. Savannah frowned. The room remained silent. Then she noticed something strange. Several family members began smiling before Ryan had even spoken a single word. Patricia exchanged a glance with Brittany. One cousin quietly chuckled. Another reached for a phone. It was almost as though they had rehearsed this moment. Almost as though they already knew what was hidden inside that folder. Ryan slowly placed it in front of his pregnant wife. Savannah stared at the folder. At first she didn't move. She blinked. Looked again. Surely she had misunderstood. Surely there had to be some mistake. But there was no mistake. The words remained exactly where they were. Divorce petition. For a few seconds, the entire world seemed to stop. The music faded into the background. The conversations disappeared. Even the sounds around her seemed distant. Her eyes moved slowly from the papers to Ryan's face. Then back to him again. She searched desperately for some sign that this was a joke. Some sign that he would start laughing and tell everyone it wasn't real. But that moment never came. Because Ryan wasn't joking. And neither was his family. The silence lasted only seconds before someone laughed. Then another. Then another. Within moments the room erupted. One relative shook his head while grinning. Another lifted a phone to record Savannah's reaction. Patricia covered her mouth as though attempting to hide her amusement. But the satisfaction in her eyes was impossible to miss. Savannah sat frozen. She couldn't believe what was happening. These weren't strangers. These were people she had spent years trying to love. People she had cooked for, supported, celebrated, forgiven. And now they were treating the worst moment of her life as entertainment. As she looked around the room, a devastating realization settled over her. Nobody intended to stop this. Nobody intended to defend her. Nobody intended to show compassion. Every person sitting at that table had chosen a side. And she was completely alone. Or so they believed. Because what nobody in that room knew was that before Christmas morning arrived, every assumption they had made about Savannah Carter would come crashing down. The woman they viewed as weak wasn't weak at all. The woman they thought they had defeated had already uncovered something that could destroy everything they valued. And before the holiday was over, the people laughing the loudest would be begging for answers they never expected to need. Before we go deeper into this unforgettable story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Because the truth is, this story isn't really about divorce papers. It isn't even about Christmas. It's about what happens when years of disrespect finally meet the wrong person. It's about the danger of assuming kindness means weakness. And it's about a family that believed they were humiliating a pregnant woman, only to discover they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. After the shocking Christmas humiliation, Savannah does something that surprises everyone. Instead of arguing, crying, or begging Ryan to reconsider, she calmly picks up the pen and signs the divorce papers. The room erupts with laughter once again because the Carter family believes they have finally gotten rid of the woman they never wanted in their lives. Ryan smirks confidently, convinced that he has complete control over the situation. But before Savannah leaves the house, she looks directly at Ryan and quietly tells him that by Christmas morning, he may wish he had treated her differently. The statement catches him off guard. For a brief moment, uncertainty crosses his face, but his family quickly dismisses her words as an empty threat from a heartbroken woman. As Savannah drives away through the snow-covered streets, viewers begin learning more about the years leading up to this moment. Flashbacks reveal how she met Ryan, how deeply she loved him, and how she spent years trying to earn acceptance from his family. The audience sees countless examples of subtle insults, exclusion, and manipulation. Ryan rarely defended her, often choosing peace with his family over loyalty to his wife. During her pregnancy, the situation worsened. Savannah began noticing secret conversations that stopped whenever she entered the room. She overheard references to legal matters and family finances. At first she ignored them, believing they were none of her business. However, several weeks before Christmas, she accidentally discovered documents that revealed something alarming. The Carter family was hiding serious financial problems. Ryan's father had made risky business decisions that left the family facing significant losses. Several investments had failed. Loans were overdue. Certain financial records appeared questionable. While organizing household paperwork one afternoon, Savannah stumbled upon evidence suggesting that family assets were being shifted around in ways that could attract unwanted attention from regulators and creditors. The more she looked, the more concerning the situation became. Realizing the potential consequences, she quietly copied documents and sought legal advice without telling anyone. Back in the present, Christmas morning arrives and the Carter family is still celebrating what they believe is their victory. Then the first phone call comes. Ryan's father receives news that a business partner has withdrawn from a major deal. Minutes later, another call arrives. Attorneys are requesting meetings. Financial institutions are asking questions. By midday, panic begins spreading through the household. The confidence and laughter from the previous night slowly disappear as one problem after another surfaces. Ryan desperately tries contacting Savannah, but she doesn't answer. Meanwhile, viewers discover another important piece of the puzzle. Savannah had spent years quietly building her own future. Unknown to Ryan and his family, she had inherited ownership interests in a successful company from a relative who believed in her potential. Rather than spending recklessly, she invested wisely and protected her assets. The Carter family always assumed she depended on Ryan financially, but the reality was very different. Savannah was far more secure than anyone realized. As pressure mounts, Ryan finally learns that Savannah's attorneys have already reviewed the documents she discovered. The information she possesses could expose financial misconduct and create serious legal problems for several family members. Suddenly, the woman they mocked becomes the one person capable of protecting them from complete disaster. The power dynamic shifts overnight. Ryan's mother, Patricia, who once treated Savannah with open hostility, begins pleading for a conversation. Brittany deletes videos she recorded during the Christmas dinner. Relatives who laughed the loudest now avoid discussing what happened. One by one, they begin realizing the consequences of their actions. Their concern is no longer the divorce. Their concern is what Savannah might do next. The emotional climax arrives when Savannah agrees to meet Ryan and several members of his family. They expect anger. They expect revenge. Instead, they meet a woman who has found clarity. Savannah explains that the greatest betrayal was never the divorce papers. It was the years of disrespect, the years of silence when she needed support, and the decision to publicly humiliate her while she was carrying Ryan's child. She tells them that trust, once broken in that way, cannot simply be restored with apologies. Ryan breaks down and admits that he allowed his family to influence him. He confesses that he knew the Christmas dinner was wrong but lacked the courage to stop it. His apology is sincere, but it comes too late. Savannah explains that forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. She may eventually forgive them, but she will never return to the life they created for her. In the final moments of the story, Savannah walks away with dignity, independence, and hope for her future. The Carter family is left to face the consequences of their choices. Ryan loses the woman who loved him most. His family loses the opportunity to be part of the life of the child they treated so carelessly before birth. The very people who laughed at Savannah's pain discover that their greatest loss is not financial. It is the realization that they destroyed something valuable that can never be replaced. The story concludes with a powerful reflection. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is not the loudest. Sometimes the person everyone underestimates is the one carrying the greatest strength. And sometimes the moment that looks like defeat is actually the beginning of a remarkable new chapter. The final question remains for viewers. If you were in Savannah's position, would you have forgiven Ryan and his family, or would you have walked away forever?